Number 5, a farmer's story from the 60s. And no, for once I'm not talking about the 1960s, the 1860s. So in 1864, we have writer I.D. Fenton. He's writing about a Welsh farmer who, after a day of fishing by the Tav, experiences an otherworldly event. So let's get into this. We got a lot of flowery language coming ahead. The air thickens with an indescribable sensation, an eerie silence accompanied by strange noises emanating from the ground. Suddenly, a long whistling shriek and the clamor of 1,000 wheels pierce the air. Horses on the hillside gallop wildly, startled by the unexplained phenomenon. This tale, at first glance, could be dismissed as folklore, a product of a superstitious people. I'm an actor, I can say that. However, there's a twist in the Chronicles of Wales, The legend finds support in the depths of railway history. The backdrop is Whitland, home to the abbey founded by Cistercian monks. Home to the abbey founded by monks in 1145 AD, now reduced to ruins, and a market town with its roots in Welsh parliamentary history. Enter Disembodied, the engineering virtuoso behind the South Wales Railway Company's project in 1852-53. So as the railway tracks approached Whitland, Brunel, for reasons lost to history, diverted them southwest through a hill, creating the Whitland Tunnel. Now this tunnel, a mere 125 yards long, became the conduit for the prophecy to unfold. So on the day of its completion, Brunel orchestrated a grand celebration in okay, I think I know how to say this, Haverfordwest. Haverfordwest? Let me know in the comments. A special excursion train, a behemoth hauling 17 rail cars and ferrying hundreds of passengers, traversed the newly laid tracks. Now the monster train made its inaugural run on December 28th of 1853, and regular services commenced on February 2nd of 1854. Now let's retrace the steps of that historic journey. The train departed from Swansea, surging through the countryside with the force of progress. Its arrival in Whitland was a spectacle, witnessed by throngs of Welsh folk, eyes wide with wonder. So as it roared through the Whitland Tunnel, the effect would have been nothing short of extraordinary. And so the legend of the spectral train from the future took shape. The horses on the hillside, as Fenton describes, would have stampeded, startled by this iron behemoth hurtling through time and space. The prophecy, as foretold by the farmer, came to fruition with the completion of the railway project. Yet, lingering on the edge of this tale, there's the whisper of a spirit train seen near Pendine, an echo of the supernatural. But perhaps, in the intricate dance of folklore and history, it's merely a mirage, a wishful glimpse of the otherworldly and the mundane reality of the tracks laid by Disembodied. So, did the farmer see a parallel world? Well, you let me know. Other than that, I guess I could consult the Welsh fairy folk. Number 4, be careful around a pool. Martin Crema experienced a time travel glitch in the indoor pool room of the Biltmore Hotel in Asheville, North Carolina that still bothers him to this day. For reference, the Biltmore Estate is a historic house museum and tourist attraction in, yes, Asheville. The main residence is a chateau-esque style mansion built for George Washington Vanderbilt II, long frickin' name, between 1889 and 1895, and is the largest privately owned house in the United States, at only 178,926 square feet of floor space. Just a dinky little thing. Still owned by George Vanderbilt's descendants, it remains one of the most prominent examples of Gilded Age mansions. And since that fateful day, Martin has read other people's reports of a similar occurrence, but he really doesn't think it had anything to do with ghosts or a haunting or anything similar. Well, at this point, I think I can safely consider myself an expert on what differs, a demon encounter from a ghostly experience, and both from, any sort of glitch in the Matrix. So let's dive into the case and then debate afterwards, seeing as, I've kind of jumped ahead of myself here. So Martin was around the age of, legal age, when he visited the house for the first time, and remembers a feeling of uneasiness as he was approaching the pool room. And since there was, a lot of folks around, he was with his grandparents, he was just pretending that he was okay, and since he was kind of underground, he thought it was just like claustrophobia. It happens, I've seen it happen to friends at conventions. So when he stepped into the pool room though, everything changed. Instead of what should have been a drained, empty pool room perfectly on display, he was met with the view of a pool full of water, with people wearing retro bathing suits and swimming all around. Martin could practically feel the water, he could smell it, he could hear it. Everybody else from present time was completely gone. Now Martin's memory is a little fuzzy, but he remembers falling backwards, to the point where his grandfather had to catch him from hitting the floor. And when he opened his eyes again, he was back but feeling absolutely horrible, as if he had actually fainted. So he told his grandpa, I need to get out of that room, and he had to hold his eyes shut as he was being guided to the other side. Now the memory of feeling sick and a very clear sense of the imagery of the pool full of water with people swimming in it have stayed with Martin over the years. Okay, I get it, time for Alexa to stop narrating. Let's break down some specifics. For me, it's a very clear example of a glitch in the Matrix or a time slip or whatever you may want to call it. And I can't even wonder why anyone would call it a ghost situation. The complete switch in scenery and the sensory attack are all more than something a simple ghost could do. Now sure, the time slip could be from a ghostly version of the past, but it's still very much a lapse in time. I do understand the estate itself is haunted by multiple ghosts, so I guess I understand how people could get things confused, but it seems like it's just an overall hotbed location for the spiritual. Kinda like how the town of Sunnydale in Buffy was a hellmouth that attracted all sorts of demons, this estate is a home for ghosties and links to the past.
Alright, number 3 on this list is a disembodied hand. This story is fully creepy and something that you should never want to see. In this one they say, I was putting makeup on and from the corner of my eye I saw what looked like the shadow of a hand slapped down onto my nightstand. Would have dismissed it as my brain playing tricks on me or something, but I heard it too. and it sounded like a really loud smack. It was weird because I've experienced so many small unusual incidents like this, things randomly falling or shaking, so I guess I've become apathetic to it. That was the first time I ever actually heard the thing too though. And honestly guys, I've experienced stuff like this too. Seeing something scary as all holy hell just out of the corner of your eye that you were probably not meant to see. To hear it though, that just adds to the scare factor. That means unless your brain just totally malfunctioned and your visual and audio sensations just messed up, you saw something that you weren't supposed to. Something glitched, and you just happened to be there for the second that it happened. I don't know about you guys, but I think I'm more than happy to live in my false simulation if it means no disembodied limbs coming out to get me. Number 2 on this list is teleportation. The ability to teleport is something that I think all of us would love to have. You work at 9 o'clock, okay, well no need to wake up early, I'll just teleport there at 8:59. Like, come on, I mean that'd be pretty sick. I'd even take the ability to teleport small distances, like from my couch to my fridge or my bedroom to my bathroom. Well, that's sort of around the lines of what this Reddit user says that they saw firsthand. They write, I have to preface this with some backstory about a man named Zeus. Now, Zeus has a reputation around Knoxville, Tennessee as a bit of an eccentric character. My brother has told me stories about him making people pass out just by whispering in their ear, giving people glass pendants and saying, this is the color of your soul, just generally unusual stuff. He was thought of as a magic man of sorts. My brother and I were walking through the Westtown Mall when we saw him. Now let me tell you, this guy is incredibly recognizable. I'm talking 6'5" African dude with a gray goatee, nose piercings, and at least 4 rings per finger. He always carried a staff and wore a floor-length black duster jacket with huge buckles on the front. This was Zeus. We saw him walking just a bit ahead of us and then turned towards an exit. Naturally, we lost sight of him for probably 60 seconds after he turned the corner and left the mall. The weird thing was, after my brother and I passed that same exit, and not more than 30 seconds later, we were coming upon another exit entrance on the other side of the mall when all of a sudden, out pops, you guessed it, good old Zeus the Magic Man. Now this is a big place. It takes 5 minutes to walk the length of it. There's absolutely no way that he could have made it to the opposite side of this place in the time that he did. Even if he was sprinting or was somehow able to go up and over the building, 60 seconds is just not long enough. This man teleported, there's just no other way to slice it. With the local lore already surrounding this guy, I can honestly believe something like this. Our man Zeus was moving around the mall using his teleportation ability, and this guy just happened to spot him in the act. You should never see this because now you know it's possible. If I actually knew that teleportation was a real life thing that I could do, there's no way I ever want to walk ever again. Also, that I just want to say my guy's name is Zeus. Like, come on guys, what else did we expect this man was gonna do? And finally, number 1 on this list is wall faces. This one is really scary guys, and something I never want to experience. A Reddit user says, I woke up from a dream where I died, and when I opened my eyes, all I saw were faces all over the walls staring at me. It was terrifying. I got up from my bed and turned on the light. The faces didn't go away. I left the room and made sure I was awake. I was. I wrote on my computer, drank some water, and when I got back in my bedroom, the faces were gone. Now they go on later to say in this post that this could have been a sleep hallucination, which is possible I suppose, but that's a pretty bloody vivid hallucination. To literally wake up and then see that for an extended period of time like that, it's just crazy. I have no idea how this person went back to sleep after something like that. Like if that was me, I am immediately heading to the real estate site and this house is getting listed yesterday. Number 5 on this list is the tailor shears. So this is a story that comes from a Reddit user, like most of the entries on this list honestly, and it comes from the user J48C767D97. Wow, what a name. They say, about 7 years ago when I was 13, my mom and I went for a drive to see her grandmother's grave. I didn't really know much about my great-grandmother because she died when I was 2, but I did know that she was a tailor and she taught my grandma how to take in clothing. She loved tailoring so much that she was buried with a pair of silver flat-edged tailor shears with a flower engraved on the handle. We went to her grave and chatted with her for a couple minutes, said goodbye, and got back in the car. As I was getting in the car, I noticed something kinda shiny in my mom's door pocket and I pointed to it. My mom grabbed it and I kid you not, like a scene from a movie, it was a pair of silver flat-edged tailor shears with, wait for it, a flower on the handle. We have no idea where they came from. It was slightly rusty at the tips but perfectly shiny around the engraving. My mom still has them hanging on the wall in her kitchen. So that is pretty weird, guys. If that story is true, then how on earth did those shears get there? Now, let's face it, this is from Reddit, so they could totally be pulling our leg with this one. Maybe none of this is true, or maybe the mother planted those shears there to make for a cool story. But also, let's go down the rabbit hole if this did actually happen. My brain automatically goes to either glitch in the Matrix or ghost. If our so-called simulation didn't just glitch out on us, then maybe it's possible that the grandmother, to communicate back, decided to leave them a little clue to say that she was listening the whole time. Either that, or someone who overheard the conversation pulled off one of the craziest and probably most insensitive pranks I've ever heard of. Comment down below what you got for this story though, because I'm pretty stumped. Number 4 on this list is the chicken. So another Reddit story here coming in from an unnamed user. They write, me and my friend were at a Chinese restaurant and we ordered a General Tso chicken dinner and a shrimp lo mein dish. When we sat down, we took out both boxes and set them on the table about 2 feet apart. My friend opens up the first box and we see a shrimp lo mein dish. It has all the things in there, noodles, shrimp, fried rice. He closes the box and then opens up the other box. Inside that box is another shrimp lo mein dish. Shrimp, noodles, fried rice. Okay, I think they must have mixed up the order. I was just about to say this though when my friend says out loud, looks like they made a mistake and gave us 2, as he opens up the first box again. Inside of it is a General Tso chicken dinner order. General Tso chicken, white rice, and an egg roll. He froze and looked at me and I looked back at him and we sat in silence. It took us 5 minutes or so to collect ourselves. I have no idea what the happened. Okay, so honestly guys, this is the sort of glitch that I'm kind of cool with seeing. I'm not really too much of a shrimp guy in all honesty, definitely more of a chicken dude, so if I had to see any glitch, then I think I'd be okay with this one. Granted, I would obviously be pretty freaked out if this happened right in front of me though. 2 separate individuals fully looked at it, saw something, and then looked at it again a few seconds later and saw something completely different. One person seeing things, that can be chalked up to nothing, but 2 people makes you start to question what the heck is going on. You know, it's honestly really too bad that we can't utilize these glitches though. Can you imagine you just open up your drawer and instead of a bunch of socks, just a bunch of chicken nuggets show up? That's the type of glitch that I think I can get behind, folks.
In our third spot, we have the parallel universe being. So 5 years ago, this individual thinks that they met someone from another universe, or that they somehow traveled to another universe. Let me explain. One day she was at the beach with her dog when she saw this strange man walking across the street. The man really stood out to her because he was donning the biggest smile on his face and he was walking like a cartoon character. His arms were swinging side to side in very exaggerated movements. A couple months later, she was with her mom and sister when they saw the exact same man again. Her sister actually noticed him first and commented on how weird he was walking. Almost immediately, their mom piped up and was like, "Don't make fun of the man." Now, here's where it gets strange. A couple weeks later, the girl was out for a late night run when she encountered this man for a 3rd time. This time, however, something was off about him. He wasn't happy and swinging his arms like before. This time, he had a huge cartoonish frown on his face and was walking all slumped over and sad. The girl ran home and told her mom and sister what she had saw, but they had no clue what she was talking about. She talked about the time that all 3 of them had seen the man and how the mom then told them to leave the man alone. But the mom and sister both did not remember that encounter at all, almost like it never happened. So basically, the girl was in one universe where this man was happy and weirdly outgoing, and then managed to switch into another universe where the man was the complete opposite. In the second universe, the encounter with her mom, and the sister never happened, which is why they had no clue what she was talking about. Isn't that freaky? In our second spot, we have the friend from another universe. This is a pretty freaky story that was posted on Reddit by user conclusionwinter4554. She shared the time that she met her friend from a parallel universe. So this story takes place back in the day when this woman was in 8th grade. The day started off normal, she was at school in math class. But when the class was over, her friend approached her and asked why the math teacher had come back. The friend said that the math teacher had switched to another school and that they had a male math teacher. The OP had no clue what her friend was saying because the math teacher had never switched. This was just the start of a weird day. The next thing that happened is that during lunch, her friend started eating meat. He had been a vegetarian for years, but for some reason, he was eating meat all of a sudden, and he even denied ever being a vegetarian. Now, stuff like that just kept happening throughout the day. Now, here's the freaky part. The next day, the friend arrives at school and apologizes to the teacher for being absent the day before. Everyone was confused because, hello, he was at school the day before. But the guy even had a note from his parents excusing his absence. That part freaked everyone out. They thought it was some prank. But now it's believed that the parallel universe version of the friend somehow ended up in their current universe, and that's who they saw at school. Weird. And in our number one spot today, we have Lorina Garcia. Lorina Garcia lived a pretty mundane life until one day everything changed before her eyes. She thought she was going crazy. So on that day, she woke up and noticed that her bed sheets were different than normal. She didn't remember purchasing this bedding, let alone changing the sheets the night before. She kind of just ignored it and went on with her day. But as she made her way to work, she noticed little things were off. Again, she just ignored this as she arrived at work. But when she got to her department, she realized that it wasn't her department. She thought she was on the wrong floor, but she wasn't. She had worked at that job on that floor for the last 20 years. But today, she worked in a different department. She even looked herself up on her works database and it said she worked with the same company but in a different department. That just threw her for a loop. Then things continued to get weird. Her former boyfriend disappeared without a trace. There were no signs of him anywhere. There was not even a sign that the two had even been together. In fact, she hired someone to see what happened to him and his son, and turns out he never existed. At least, not in this universe. Her current boyfriend was someone completely different. It was the guy that she was dating previously, but they had broken up and she moved on. But now suddenly, they were back together again. So somehow when Lorina went to bed, she managed to travel to another universe. Isn't that crazy? Like, imagine waking up and having a completely new job and partner. I would be freaked out. Starting off this countdown, we have the Green Children of Woolpit. Back in the 13th century, something occurred that took the residents in the small village of Woolpit, England by surprise. Two weird children randomly appeared in the village, clearly out of place. The two were brother and sister and had weird greenish colored skin. To make things weirder, they spoke in a language no one had heard of, and they were dressed in weird clothing. Eventually, they were taken in, but sadly the boy became sick and passed away. The girl, on the other hand, started to like normal food and started to lose the green color in her skin. After learning to speak English, she said that her and her brother were from a place where people had green skin and the sun didn't shine bright. According to her, they were herding their dad's cattle when all of a sudden they heard a loud noise, and then bam, they were in a new place. The girl ended up growing up and marrying a man and starting a whole new life there. But it seems like the two traveled there from another dimension. Maybe in a parallel universe there are humans with green skin. Who knows? Coming in at number 4, we have the death. Just recently, Reddit user Tomato Ketchup shared the scary experience that they had with a parallel universe. So she starts off by explaining that her father passed away years ago, but according to a number of people, they had seen and spoke to her father and didn't know he had died. The first time it happened was with an old colleague of her father's. He ran into her mom and he said, "Oh, I met your husband just a few weeks ago." The mom explained that that was impossible since he was dead. They brushed it off thinking that maybe he was just confused. But then it happened again. This time it was with someone that the mom used to tutor. He ran into the mom and told her how he saw the father about a month ago and they chatted for a long time. So could it be that in one universe the father is alive and that people who encountered him are somehow universe hopping without even knowing it? And apparently this is common. Another Reddit user posted a very similar experience as well. Their cousin was only 30 when he passed away from heart disease. The day after his death, a bunch of people at the grocery store were saying how they saw him there, and how he was so friendly and chatting to all the cashiers. The Reddit user explained how that was impossible, but apparently a number of people admit that they saw him there, so they weren't making this up. A few months later, another person claims to have seen and interacted with him. So in one reality, the cousin and the father hadn't passed away yet. Maybe they're not sick at all in that universe. And somehow, those two different universes, the one where they're alive and the one where they're dead, intersected. It's crazy.
Number 3. Home Sweet Home. Back in the summer of 1987, Nick Riddle was visiting his girlfriend Helen, who lived in a big former, vicarage built around the 1800s in a small village in Yorkshire. So one August weekend, Helen had the house to herself and decided to have a small party. Nick was instructed to bring his buddy Tim along to be set up with one of Helen's friends, so the party was him and Tim and Helen and 3 of her friends from university. Now the party was full of debauchery, partially helped by liquid courage, and by midnight the girls were all in Helen's room. The 2 guys were ready to find somewhere to fall into sleep. You know where things go. So to set the scene, imagine a house with around 12 bedrooms on a single floor. And while Nick knew the door to the bathroom and to Helen's room, every other door was a mystery. So Tim and Nick walked to the end of a passage and pushed open a door, revealing a room entirely empty except for 2 small ancient iron beds squeezed against the wall and a few packing crates. There was no carpet on the floor and no other furniture, and it was like a small storage room. But there were beds, and the guys weren't too fussy, so night-night for everybody. The next thing Nick knew was that he was sitting up in bed, looking out of the window, and suddenly had 5 bars. Looking out of the window and it suddenly had 5 bars, like upright bars, like an old jail. The sun was streaming into the room and it was blinding, but outside the window he could clearly see the branches of a large tree as they moved in what seemed to be a very windy morning. So once his eyes adjusted, he realized the room was filled with very old-fashioned furniture and there was no ceiling electric light anymore. So as he tried to make sense of where he was, he could hear people moving outside the room, and more specifically the sound of china cups and plates, clinking together as people carried and served food. So he tried to get out of bed, but he was actually paralyzed from the waist down. Suddenly, a door opened and a young woman walked into the room, who was dressed like a servant from a period movie, and talked in a way he couldn't understand before leaving. So at this point, Nick was shaking like a leaf and trying to figure out, what the heck do I do next? So he looked down at his watch and everything went dark. So when he woke up again, he could hear snoring and his digital watch showed it was 3:10 in the morning. So wherever he had been, he was back where he needed to be. He leapt out of bed, felt for the light switch, turned it on, and thankfully everything was 1987 again. Confirmed by, the language from Tim, who was woken up by the light that I can't repeat. First thing in the morning, he was awoken once again by the sunlight streaming through the window. But this time, there was no bars in the window, no tree limbs bending, on the shafts of light that streamed into the room. It was just an ordinary window. So he went downstairs, told Helen the entire story over a cup of coffee. Now, she went very quiet and asked him, "Did you go in my dad's study?" Which Nick was like, "No, why would I?" So she led him to said study and pointed out a set of 5 old sepia photographs which were framed on the wall. Now, the earliest dated from around 1880 and showed the growing up of a family in full Victorian attire. There were 8 offspring and one was in an ancient wheelchair. They were all arranged in front of, you guessed it, a huge oak tree, behind which the window of the time slip room clearly had bars. Creepy. Number 2, a time traveler encounter. So in the summer of 2000, Steve Conrad and his friend, both this many years old at the time, were riding their bicycles. It was in the evening on a Sunday night. They lived in a small town, so it was pretty safe for them to be out and about. I grew up in a small town, I get it. So they were seated by the town park where they saw a figure seated beneath the pavilion. Now this was highly unusual as the park was usually empty at this time. So curious, they ventured closer and saw that it was a woman who looked to be in her 30s, seated at a bench, painting, some sort of arts easel. So she called out to them in a monotonous voice, kind of like an automated voice would, kind of like an automated voice from an answering machine. So they biked a little closer and saw that she was wearing colorful, mismatched thrift store attire, which was kind of out of place for the usual townsfolk. Her expression was entirely blank. She stared through rather than at them, as if they weren't even there. She began to ask some generic questions like, "Who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing?" All in her monotonous voice. Her movements were stiff and awkward. Her eyebrows and lips appeared to be painted on, and her skin was like plastic. In short, she was like a mannequin come to life. Now the painting she was working on portrayed the night sky, occupied by the moon and stars, each with faces showing different expressions. The duo felt a sense of dread that grew and grew, their instincts telling them to get the heck out of Dodge. So, they did. They rode their bicycles a brief distance away and then returned shortly thereafter to see if she was still there. But she and her art set were gone without a trace. And they looked around, checked some sidewalks, checked some pathways. No sign of her. Now this is odd for a number of reasons. For starters, she was barefoot. There was no vehicle, no bike nearby, so if somebody had come to pick her up, they would have seen and heard it. Also, she had that, that big art set with the easel, which would have been really awkward to carry by yourself. Also, apparently they were gone for less than a minute, which is not nearly enough time for somebody to run away, so give that what you will. Number 1, random horsey. So in the summer of 1995, Daniel Gervais and his father were fishing in a wooded area. Now the excursion hadn't been super successful, as one does. So when the sun was beginning to set, they were like, okay, time to go home, made their way towards the vehicle. Now as they were pulling away, they turned to the side and saw a woman on horseback in like traditional riding garb. So like a red coat, white pants, boots, you know, the fancy hat. She was staring at them pretty angrily, as if they were like intruding on her land. Now they pulled forward a little bit and then looked back, but she was gone without a trace. Now this left the guys pretty confused, and they got the heck out of there. Now this was bizarre for a number of reasons. Apparently there is none, nor has there ever been a stable in the area, and owning and riding horses was a hobby well out of the price range for the local folks. The specific stretch of wood the two were fishing in had no clearings, no paths, nowhere for a horse to like walk on. And more curiously, the woman and her horse were completely silent. If they had retreated back into the woods, somebody would have heard, you know, the sound of the hooves, but nothing. Just there one second, gone the next.